This time last year, well, this time during of course, the very beginning of 2025, I did Bob Dylan's Under the Red Sky. Now, of course, that was back in January, and that was the year 1990. So we're looking ahead, and of course, I've been consistently throughout the year, of course, doing my commentary, videos on Bob Dylan. And my last one I did was, of course, the American Songbook albums or whatever. So I'm doing right now the latest, or should I say it's been 5 years already now, doing, ever since January when I did Under the Red Sky, 1990, and now here we are at the end of the year doing a Bob Dylan video. So I did a Bob Dylan video at the very beginning of the year and going, all the way throughout the months, of course, kind of breaking them up or whatever, kind of, separately doing commentary videos throughout, monthly or whatever, up to pretty much now. This is, this is 2020 when Rough and Rowdy Ways was released or whatever. And of course it came out in June, and it went to number 2. It was a very big album, I believe. I remember also that same year as well, or at least the end of the year, was a McCartney 3. So I feel like most people were so anticipated for both of those albums, but I feel like most people were, a lot of people were, anticipating a lot more for McCartney's new McCartney 3. Of course, for many, of course, the big Dylan, geeks or whatever and fans, they were so anticipated for, of course, the new Dylan album. This is his 39th studio album. Can you believe that? 39 albums that Bob Dylan has made through, let's see, almost 6 decades. It's been almost the expandment of almost 6 decades. And, ever since the debut, that was, over, how long ago was that? That was, we're taking a look, almost 64 years since that album, since Bob Dylan's very first album was released from Columbia. But, and you know what, a lot of people, for many people that the comments I read under the, from those, the separate videos or these songs from the Rough and Rowdy Ways, it's amazing how people are saying, wow, man, how can Bob Dylan still go out there and perform and still do what he does? He's just he's just a work of art. He's just someone that can just, for his age, he can still just perform. He could still go out there and be, he just seems, I know with his, just the way he looks and stuff, you may think, all right, well, this is going to be the end. And of course, there's been many of critics and people and, fans of us, fans of Bob Dylan, whatever, that have been thinking, wow, I felt like Dylan should have ended his career by, even people thinking way back to stuff from the 70s and, stuff like Under the Red Sky. People are thinking, oh, he should have ended his career by that album, or maybe he should have ended after his whole revival trilogy, his whole with the whole Time Out of Mind. People thinking, oh, Time Out of Mind should have been the end. That should have been the last Dylan album. But it's crazy. It's super crazy. And even Tempest, people remember. I was also reading too as well. Many people thought maybe Tempest should have been his last album, whatever. But I'm going to be talking about. Now, this has been, and I've been really, really deep diving into Rough and Rowdy Ways, at least these people that thought of the album and stuff. Most people had a bit of a struggle. Struggle in a different, not struggling what is this even, what is he trying to, is he, is it making sense to me, or is he, just making up, words that don't, link with one another or whatever. Like, it doesn't wrap into one. It doesn't make sense or whatever. And yeah, I think a lot of people seem to be very, very, they struggle a little bit, with the album. And I kind of think the same way too when I first heard it. Now, of course, the big extravaganza, of course, the very big, which I think hopefully this may be the last that, that Bob. I mean, I'm not saying that Bob Dylan should just end it. I mean, hey, if he keeps going, he keeps going, right? But Murder Must Foul. Now, of course, Murder Must Foul was the first kind of thing that was released before the album. Basically, is March of 2020, and I feel like this album kind of reflects. I mean, not to say completely reflects. This is, but I think to me this kind of has a little bit of what we were all kind of basically facing. The whole the pandemic and all. And I feel like Bob Dylan was kind of thinking that a little bit. Not to the extent of being like, okay, well, this album's basically how we are all feeling with COVID or whatever. There's a little bit of that there. It's not like throughout the whole album, basically, But let's go ahead and talk about the songs here. I think these songs are absolutely just. I think to me these are definitely the best I've ever seen. That are not only have seen, but just just like how it all kind of really. I don't know. It just seems like it all makes sense. Like, it all just seems to be like so like okay, this is how we are as a society. This is how we are as humans. This is how we face things in life. And I feel like it completely makes sense, And of course, you got the same great musicians, of course, on this album, dated back all the way to, of course, the stuff from the the Revival trilogy, or at least the comeback years. You got Tony Garnier, of course, and all those people. Got Bent Montench on here. What a great player he was. And of course, he was in the Heartbreakers. All right, so the first song is "I Contain Multitudes." That's the first song on Rough and Rowdy Ways. Now, I was very also, at least when the album came out, because believe it or not, I have not heard Rough and Rowdy Ways until 2 weeks ago, basically. That's crazy, right? I think I heard a little bit back before the album's release, like when they released the single, Murder Must Foul or whatever. I heard a little bit of that, and I was like, what is this? Like, like the first time I heard it, and then like it was kind of like the same way listening to the full, basically going back, listening to the album, so I know, I can't believe that. I should go back 5 years ago and tell my 5-year, tell my, I don't know, how old was I, 23 or something like that? I should tell my 23-year-old self to say, hey, you should have listened to Rough and Rowdy Ways when it was released, or at least get that, or at least had the CD or whatever, It's scary to say that 5 years ago I was 23. Well, June of 2020 I was 23, but of course, November, my birthday's in November, I turned 24. So not exactly, prior, I guess of 5 years, just 5 years in June of 2020, Yeah, and it's scary to think now my sister's 23 now. Yeah, scary. But anyways, yeah, so the one thing that I definitely like is also the album cover too. I think it was like a photo or something that was done in 1964, I believe. And it really kind of describes a little bit of what the album kind of, or at least the symbolism, or at least the people kind of enjoying the settled music or whatever, and you got the one guy kind of really getting into like and maybe reflects on some of the album themes, or the themes from the themes that are coming from the album itself, or maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. there's most people take it for what it is. They really anticipate, but whatever. I don't want to get too much into that, but go too further into that whole dilemma, whatever. So let's go ahead and get started here. The first one, of course, is "I Contain Multitudes." What a great song! And I definitely like that. I just absolutely love the opening on the song. It's like you hear like this very low registered kind of like bass or whatever. Maybe it's a little bit like a maybe like an upright bass, or maybe like a one of those big where you string with the bow, whatever. But it's absolutely so just sad. But in a way, it almost sounds very joyful too, as well. I just definitely love the opening acoustic, of course, and what Dylan's just delivered, just the way he with his age and stuff, and now that he's really, really at the point now where of course he can. Believe it or not, he can sing, but not to, of course, with his aging and then with his it's just like how it is when you age. It just seems like your voice changes and it kind of somewhat deteriorates a little bit, and and I think he really, and even the song too, I'm not going to really read a whole lot of lyrics to the songs here because I don't want to maybe bore you so much here. All right, no, okay. But I feel like Dylan is saying here, like, I feel like he had really, he's basically saying like, hey, I've really, really put myself to the limit. He says, a good example probably in the song is. What's one kind of thing here? Well, maybe. Oh, but again, some songs may be about him. Maybe there's songs about other people. He explains about people like Anne Frank and Indiana Jones, and I just love when he also mentions about the Rolling Stones too. How he says, and the British bad boys, the Rolling Stones. He says, I go right to the edge. So here we go. Here we go. This is what I mean here. I go right to the end. I go right where all things lost and are made good again. And maybe I think he's referring to himself, I believe there, where he felt like he contributed so much to, where he's saying he's done a lot. He's pushed, he pushed himself to the edge, and mentioning about many famous figures. Also, William Blake, he mentions on here too. Also, Beethoven. So really, really great stuff. And also, I like how he also, takes stuff from Shakespeare too as well, And, it refers to a lot of, how we act in life, and also when we decide to go, basically, And here's another good one as well, False Prophet. This is another really good one as well. A little bit of a groove, a little shuffly, bluesy groove here. Really, a lot of, old bluesy kind of, a lot of old bluesy kind of, just stuff that he plays here on this album, whatever, But yeah, False Prophet, another really, another great one, of course, I like how he says, hello, Mary Lou, hello, Miss Pearl. That's funny. So definitely this one, I can definitely, just by reading here, you could definitely tell this is maybe about himself, or maybe perhaps, just, like famous figures and famous, just talking about different, leaders and stuff that, that, they may think they're false in a way, I like how he says here, I've searched I've searched the world over, I've searched the world over the Holy Grail. I sing songs of love. I sing songs of betrayal. Don't care what I drink. Don't care what I eat. I climbed a mount of swords on my bare feet. Wow. So he's almost like, kind of looking back and, and just all the different things he stuff to really, push himself and take stuff a little bit, like he basically was saying throughout the 60s, of course, how he was saying he was, I'm not a leader here, I'm not a prophet, that's what he was saying back then, in the 60s. Yeah, I like this line. I ain't no false prophet. I'm nobody's bride. Can't remember when I was born, and I forgot when I died. Wow. Okay, then after that is my own version of you. Now, I like this really spooky kind of like, it just really has a really weird kind of like, almost like, ooh, kind of creepy, It's kind of, it's kind of like a little bit of the Bride of Frankenstein somewhat, taking ideas and taking different, piecing it all together to make this wonderful creature or whatever, like he says here, I'll take Scarface, Pacino, and the Godfather Brando. Mix them up in a tank and get a robot commando. Yeah, so like he's saying here, he's taking many of different people, limbs and livers and brains and hearts. Kind of gives it a bit of like a really weird, kind of like macabre vibe, I like this line too. I'm going to make you play the piano like Leon Russell. That's a good reference to, of course, him. Like Liberace, like St. John the Apostle. You can bring it to St. Peter. You can bring it to Jerome. You can move it on over, bring it all the way home. I love how he's still, he still talks about spiritual people, spiritual... And he's still very spiritual. He still talks about the Bible. He's very biblical on some of the, lyrics and stuff. It's great stuff. I like that. Then we got I've made up. Okay, let me reading it a little bit too. I've made up my mind to give myself to you. Really, really love this song. It's a beautiful ballad. I like the background vocals as well. And again, it's almost like a little bit like a. It just almost seems like he's like, it's like, all right, if this is going to be my last, if this is going to be my everlast album here, or my very last thing I'm ever going to do in my whole lifetime, this is what I'm doing here. This is my gift, kind of somewhat. This is my, I'm giving everything, I like the one line on here. Maybe it's towards the end. It says, "My heart's like a river that sings. It just takes me a while to realize things. I'll see you at sunrise. I'll see you at dawn. I'll lay down beside you when everyone's gone. From the plains and the prairies, from the mountains to the sea, I hope that the gods go easy with me. I knew you'd say, I'm saying it too. I've made up my mind to give myself to you." So he's almost like perhaps dying, and yeah, here we go. Rough and Rowdy ways. Some people may think it's, a lot of people say that it's very dark, And yes, it is, of course, very, very, sad, you know. And then here we go, Black Rider. This is actually from a novel, I believe, that's called Black Rider. I think that was, I don't remember the time frame or whatever, but anyways, it's basically about the story of the Black Rider or whatever. I believe it's about, I think it's like based on the West or something like that. But you can definitely tell here that the Black Rider is, of course, like every, like what Dylan has been, even going back to his, his Christian, the holy albums or whatever, or the Christian years or whatever, how he always writes, like the Man with the Long Black Coat and, stuff like that, where he talks about, the devil being disguised or whatever, and always mentioning about Satan himself, But yeah, this is definitely about, a really evil figure or a guy that's in a black kind of on the run and kind of always in a kind of being somewhat of a of a hunter or whatever, and again, you really get that nice kind of flow into the song, a little bit of a groove, somewhat, yeah. But I feel like that's what the song's about. I don't want to jump in too much of the lyrics there, but it's definitely about an evil figure or whatever, And then we get Goodbye Jimmy Reed. Now, of course, is definitely what Bob Dylan has always been, always being inspired and always doing somewhat of a Jimmy Reed type song ever since the 60s, ever since stuff going back to Bring It All Back Home and stuff like that. But this is definitely, talking about, of course, the great Jimmy Reed, but also perhaps talking about other people, where he talks about, referencing the Bible again. You see it here, where he says, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Go tell it on the mountain. Go tell the real story. Tell it in that straightforward, pranatical tone in the mystic hours when a person's alone. Or maybe perhaps he's talking about Jesus. Maybe perhaps, but definitely a really, really good song. I'm not trying to like really brush, because I'm really trying to do my best here to kind of, interpretate or at least kind of think how I, think of the song, whatever. But I mean, again, it may be about Jimmy Reed, maybe about be Jesus. I don't know, But I definitely like of course, the playing too as well. Definitely excellent. Then we get, of course, Mother of Muses, and this is really, really. When I first heard this, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can really take this. But you know what? I think I really love. I think I'm starting to really think now this is definitely one of my favorites on the album, Mother of Muses. Where he talks about, of course, now Muses, the Mother of Muses, of course, is referencing to the goddess Muses, and he's almost like, talking about her, talking about how people carry their dreams, where he references about, again, referencing other famous people or figures or whatever. Sing of Sherman, Montgomery, and Scott. Sing of Zhukov and Patton and the battles they fought. So he's talking about people that, that really, really, that really rowed themselves into to the promised land, basically. Where they really had God on their side, or they really had hopes and dreams and stuff, and they really, they basically accomplished their time, their life or whatever, And it felt like he's saying, like, with all the people that really, if you really, really, if you really believe hard, and if you really accomplish what you can do, then like, I just, if you're, then, like, I just don't, like, you know what I mean? If you really, if you really go and, you know what I mean? And it's hard. I don't want to get stuck here. But anyways, it's, it's, again, like, I'm not trying to, I don't know, it's just, I know some people may be a little bit more, like, explaining more about it, but, I think that's all I can say. I think Mother Muse is definitely, again, a beautiful song, talking about, people who rode to victory, and, and they really believed in themselves. And there you go. Okay, the next song is Crossing the Rubicon. Now, this is about, of course, Caesar, Julius Caesar. And definitely like some of the lines here, such as, the Rubicon is the red river going gently as she flows, redder than your ruby lips and the blood that flows from the rose, 3 miles north of Bergadery, one step from the great beyond. I pray to the cross and I kiss the girls and I cross the Rubicon. So once again, he's kind of referring or referencing or, talking about the famous Rubicon River, and I think it was in Rome, I believe, right, or something like that. and it's got a little bit of, I like the style too as well. It's got a little bit of a B.B. King, a little bit of maybe even a Chuck Berry a little bit too, but some good stuff. Okay, then we get, of course, the two Goliaths, the last two big songs, of course, on the album. Key West, Philosopher Pirate. Now, this song is absolutely, I mean, if I can say it here, I really hope that this may be one of the last things he ever, I'm hoping that this becomes his swan song, I think, because, it really just reminds you a lot of, if you kind of see how many great, just overall long, like Highlands and Sad Eye Lady of the Lowlands. I really hope that this I really hope, even if I hope, or even if it's going to be one of the biggest songs out of his lifetime, or, during his lifetime, even, the last song on Highway 61, I hope that this becomes his swan song, his very last big, like, this is it. This is how I'm going to go out. This is it, the song right here, Key West. I've heard a lot of different things, or at least heard a lot of different, his kind of ideas in making the song. He thought of Jimmy Buffett or whatever, But I really love these wonderful lyrics here. I don't know if I can, But yeah, he's almost like saying, if this is where I'm gonna just completely close everything out, if this is how I'm gonna really end my life, I'm gonna end my life right here. He's looking for a good spot, a good, place where he's gonna be, like in Shambhala or something, Then it's Key West, and it's a beautiful song. I love the accordion on it. It's a really well, it's absolutely a very well recorded song, I believe, in my opinion. And then we get the very last song, which I think is kind of like a dirge, you know, and that is Murder Must Foul. Now, of course, when you bought the CD, you also got the single Murder Must Foul, which has, of course, JFK on it. And, I mean, I don't really want to deep dive into this or whatever, deep dive into this whole song or whatever. But I do want to kind of read this very last stanza from Key West, and then I'll read the very last stanza of Murder Must Foul. So it says here, Key West is the place to be if you're looking for immortality. Key West is paradise divine. Key West is fine and fair. If you lost your mind, you'll find it there. Key West is on the horizon line. Okay, so here's Murder Must Foul. I'm not going to obviously read the whole stuff here, but, you know, he really goes a lot here with referencing, you know, if you want to talk about referencing of, if you see a Bob Dylan song referencing a bunch of people, this is a song here, really, takes stuff from Romeo and Juliet and, of course, people dying and stuff, and tragedies, Yeah, but he kind of goes, and I feel like with this song, he goes a little bit to, where you feel like, okay, this may be a little bit, this has to end, this has to end. But I definitely I believe these last two, or at least this song here. I mean, not the song, but the last line here is, it says, "Play the blood-stained banner, play Murder Must Foul." That's the very last lyric there of the last song that people may think, all right, well, is this the end? Is this the end here? Is this talking about, he seems like he's he already made his mark already, he had accomplished many big things in his career. He won a Grammy, or he won several Grammys. He was the Nobel Peace Prize winner. He's done a lot, and I think to wrap things up, I think Rough and Rowdy Ways is definitely, if you kind of listen to it, if you listen to a way where, maybe perhaps you see it and you're like, okay, well, maybe this may be about, how we feel, it's about, folks that have already reached their limit and it's time for them to rest and and let their spirit, let their spirit be out, and be there for you, let the faith be there, let it kind of be here, even though, when death time comes, but I don't know. I think I kind of see things a bit different. Maybe other people see it differently, but I feel like maybe, who knows? I don't know. I've heard rumors that maybe Dylan might possibly come out with another album. Maybe he might be recording new stuff or whatever, writing stuff. But since then, I don't know. I mean, that's basically just people kind of just not thinking it in reality or whatever, But yeah, there you go. Rough and Rowdy Ways. That's how I feel about the album. I know it's a long video here. I know, folks, I'm sorry, but I think this album is definitely I wouldn't, and again, I definitely wouldn't say this wouldn't be my top favorite Dylan albums, but it's definitely quite up there for sure. You know, maybe top 15, maybe perhaps, you know. And there you go, Rough and Rowdy Ways. Now, of course, that title, Rough and Rowdy Ways, I don't know if I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, is a reference from the 1929 song that was done by Jimmy Rogers, I believe. But yeah, there you go, Rough and Rowdy Ways. Yeah, great stuff, folks, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.